Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Wire. I'm your host, Otto. Last week, we explored various techniques for navigating challenging interactions and expressing our emotions effectively. We discovered the significance of assertiveness, the importance of controlling our responses, and the impact of understanding our thought process. By learning how to express anger respectfully, we can foster stronger, healthier relationships and create positive outcomes. It is real. We just have to be willing to work through it. We also touched on how conflict is an inevitable part of life, work, and all relationships, ranging from workplace miscommunication to personal disagreements. Conflict, we learned, can lead to either resolution or all-out war. And how we approach this greatly influences the outcome. Understanding that having the right mindset is going to help lead towards a peaceful resolution, while having the wrong mindset going into it is going to lead to guaranteed conflict and continued tension. We also explored reasons to face conflict. What are some reasons that you found? We went over reasons such as standing against what is wrong, protecting others, addressing unsustainable situations, and seeking resolutions for reconciliation. Compassion was one of the key highlights that we talked about, and this is an element in managing conflict, is having compassion, empathizing the importance of choosing relationships over winning and connecting over dominating. We covered a lot last week, so if you didn't get a chance to watch that video, I'd say go back and watch that one and then come check this one out, because today we're going to be moving even further as we dive into a topic that touches the core of all of our relationships and is a key factor to personal growth, and that is forgiveness. For anyone who has faced immense challenges and hardships, you need to understand that the true power of forgiveness can transform your mindset if you allow it. Today's goal is to learn that forgiveness is possible, and it is a vital aspect to bringing the process of anger to conclusion. So stay with me as we unpack this powerful tool and impact our lives. It's challenging. It really can be challenging when you think about forgiveness. You have to open up your mind to thinking about the people who have hurt us. That's challenging. We often don't want to let go of the painful memories of abuse, put downs, broken promises, or harsh words. Why is it so easy to hold on to these negative aspects? To me, it sounds like holding on to bad credit, and that's absolutely unnecessary. So the question is how can we unlock the door to forgiveness and become debt-free in that aspect? We need to understand a few fundamentals. Forgiveness, though difficult, it is possible. Forgiveness is not going to be an easy process. Forgiveness is vital to resolving your anger. Forgiveness is the road to personal healing and reconciliation with God and others. Forgiveness is an ongoing process. I think Jesus says in the Bible that you need to forgive 7 times 77 in one day, and that's a lot, but that is a lot of giving mercy and grace and not holding a grudge. Forgiveness emulates the highest quality of humanity because forgiveness sets you free from the past. Now, forgiveness is often misunderstood as a sign of weakness, maybe even giving in. However, this is actually the absolute opposite. Forgiveness is a powerful act of strength, humility, and self-awareness. It requires us to relinquish hold of anger and resentment to move towards a place of peace and reconciliation. And that sounds a lot better than destructiveness and loneliness. And I've been there. When we forgive, we are not excusing the wrongful behavior or forgetting what is done. Instead, we are choosing to release ourselves from the emotional prison of anger and resentment. And I know this sounds challenging, and at first, it most definitely is, but in the long run, it will be worth it. Talking about forgiveness causes us to reflect on some very personal, hurtful experiences in our lives. Exploring these emotions, it is a tough topic, especially if you don't understand them. We don't want to think about those times, and we find ourselves struggling to resolve the memories of pain and inflicted wounds by others. So what are some of the most challenging things for you to forgive? Here are a few examples. People who manipulate, abuse, irresponsible, who lie, cheat, who are arrogant, disrespectful, or inconsiderate. All of those can be very hard topics to forgive, because forgiveness is a difficult topic because it calls us as human beings to a higher standard, and that is the standard of grace and mercy. But when we don't forgive, we run into a much greater dilemma, and that is unforgiveness. And this is where the pain of resentment and bitterness flows through our veins. It's like hot poison, I feel it. It quenches our spirits, and it will breed nothing but cynicism about people, life, and God. Unforgiveness encases us in a miserable experience, changing our perception of the world and people from positive to negative. So if I can forgive, then obviously that has to be a switch around. If unforgiveness takes everything from positive to negative, if I start to forgive, it can take negative situations and turn them positive. And I know personally that if I do not investigate these feelings and I have unforgiveness, that it will cause me to withdraw, priming me to see the world and other people as hostile. And that is one thing that I'm really working on getting myself out of, because I don't want to be stuck in that resentment. I don't want to encase myself in this emotional prison if there's an opportunity for me to think a little bit different. So I need to be able to define forgiveness. So how would you define forgiveness? Letting go of the blame, ceasing resentment. Forgiveness cancels the debt someone owes us and restores relationship. It is the only solution in a world ridden with sin and evil to help us start over with people. Forgiveness gives us the opportunity to express love and grace to others. So what is forgiveness and what is not forgiveness? Well, forgiveness is a choice. It's not a feeling, because if I had to go off of the feeling, I wouldn't be willing to make that choice. But because I continue to forgive and forgive, it makes it a little easier each time. And then now I have that I want to forgive. But at first, it definitely was a choice. Forgiveness isn't fair, it's not easy, and it's hard work. Forgiveness is when you decide to let someone off the hook, when you elect to not get paid back or take revenge for a wrongdoing, when you withhold punishment. However, forgiveness is not turning a blind eye or ignoring what happened, so don't let that get confused. Forgiveness is not forgetting or denying what happened. Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. Forgiveness doesn't always justify, approve, or excuse the offender. Forgiveness doesn't always remove the consequences of the offense from the offender. Forgiveness is a process that may include confrontation and exhortation. We need this, though. Why do we need forgiveness? As soon as we're in the state of anger, it creates the need to forgive. As soon as we become angry with something, we need that sweet relief of forgiveness, not only to grant it to others, but also to receive it for ourselves. We need forgiveness to bring our lives back into a state of harmony and peace. Forgiveness is another way of saying, I'm human, I make mistakes, and I also want to grant you that privilege. Forgiveness breaks the cycle. Forgiveness doesn't settle all the questions, blame, injustice, or fairness. To the contrary, it often evades those questions, but it does allow relationships to start over. Now, having forgiveness and repenting and being able to make the choice to change and be different does make human beings different from all animals. And it's not our capacity to think that makes us different, but the capacity to repent and forgive and choosing to not do it again. Only humans can perform this unnatural act, and by doing so, they can develop relationships that transcend the relentless law of nature. And an example that I always use, because I feel like dogs are just such unique creatures. Now, my dog can't make these choices to like open up the door and let himself out. And every once in a while, he does pee on the floor just a little bit. And as soon as that is found and I bring it up to him, he is instantly repenting. I'm sorry. I mean, tail between his legs on the ground, rolling on his back so that you can see his stomach. I don't have to yell. He knows that he had done something wrong, and I point to it, and he doesn't look around and act like, oh, that wasn't me. Well, yeah, buddy, obviously it was you, because it surely wasn't me. He instantly just admits his wrong. He's been caught red-handed and asks for forgiveness in the way that dogs do, and it's so amazing. Now, if he could only learn to open up the door and let himself out, that might make it easier. So what that says for me is, man, when I'm caught in an offense or something, I just need to own it and not hide from it. And on the other sense, when it comes to, forgiveness, there's been times that the dog has been in the way before. I'm like, hey, get out of the way, man. Like I'm carrying something or whatever. I could put it down in the kitchen and then go back outside and come back in. It's like, he's an instant reset. He instantly forgave me. And I come back in and he's like happy again to see me. And there's not any like in between. So as soon as I catch my dog, he instantly repents. And if I make a mistake, he's very easy to forgive. Now, that might sound silly, but I just want to break this down to as simple as possible. So where we differ is the choice to continue to move forward and not make those mistakes anymore. So that is how we differ from animals in that. And it's interesting talking about forgiveness and looking at different religions and the importance and the process of forgiving. No matter what religious background you come from or believe in, it may help you to know that forgiveness is an important aspect to spiritual life. And Christians are told to forgive as Christ has forgiven you. I know that if I don't forgive, my unforgiveness will be held against me. It was really interesting to find out about some of these other religions like Judaism. If a person causes harm, but then sincerely and honestly apologizes to the wrong individual and tries to rectify the wrong, that wronged individual required to grant forgiveness. Islam teaches that God is all forgiving. Forgiveness often requires repentance of those being forgiven. In Buddhism, forgiveness is seen as a practice to prevent harmful thoughts causing havoc on one's mental well-being. That's wild. Forgiveness cancels a debt that someone owes us and can restore a relationship when restoration is possible. And it is the only solution in a world ridden with sin and evil to help us restart with people and discover peace. So how can you forgive someone who has hurt you? Here are a few steps to practicing forgiveness. And applying these steps can deliver us from the bitterness and help us work towards forgiveness. And forgiveness, you really have to discover this first for yourself. Think about a time when someone has forgiven you when you know that you didn't deserve it. Because if you were forgiven, realistically, you didn't deserve it and they had to make a choice. What was that like when they forgave you? And maybe you're having a hard time thinking about that. And at times I do as well. And I find that thinking about how God has forgiven me helps me forgive others, because we have to choose to forgive, and you must make the decision to let go of bitterness and revenge to forgive others. You have to renew your mindset and challenge it with the truth about how you need to be forgiven too. And when you realize that you need to be forgiven too, it will help you grant mercy and empathize with those who have injured you. Recognizing that forgiveness is the only way to be set free from the prison of resentment. Remember, forgiveness is a process. And if you're stuck in unforgiveness, then you need to talk to somebody that you can confide in that won't judge you so that you can release these feelings of how you feel and why. This context for release of the painful feelings that you're experiencing can provide support and also a better understanding of the person and situations. When others hurt us or abuse us, when they disrespect us or humiliate us, we can forgive them. So don't think that your anger should be stuffed down, negated, or turned into bitterness. Your anger is an emotion and force that can be useful. You can decide to forgive because that is a mechanism to resolving the hurts and unfairness in life. So a few guidelines for reconciliation and forgiving. Deal constructively with the root cause of anger towards the offending party. Ask yourself, what am I angry about? What are my responsibilities? And what are the other person's responsibilities? Plan a constructive confrontation. Apologize if appropriate. And this is a huge step for taking responsibility for any way that you have offended someone. And use a soft, loving approach. Reflect on the fact that you need forgiveness as well, but be honest yet tactful. You must choose to forgive. In doing this, releases the other person from guilt and bondage. Let go of the demands that you want to make on the other person. Return good to the offending party and change your attitude towards your spouse or the offending party. All of this is possible. Does forgiveness equal no consequence? One thing to think about or ask yourself is, are you willing to treat somebody that has hurt you the same as somebody that has not hurt you? And that's assuming that the relationship is salvageable, whatever that might be for you. Are you going to be able to treat people the same? You maybe see them at the grocery store. How do you treat them? I don't have to reconcile or bring that person back into my life, but I do know that I have to forgive them. So does that mean that there should be no consequences for the actions? Well, there are consequences which sometimes can and should be removed when we forgive. Maybe you decide that a friendship may change because that person can't keep confidences. Understanding that a change in a relationship is not the same as forgiveness. You can let go of the blame and let go of any punishment and still continue to hold that wrong against the person. Now, maybe you learn something about that person's character and they can no longer be trusted with confidences, or that they are not empathetic and tend to be harsh when you are vulnerable and talk about your weaknesses. Maybe they're not responsible in keeping their commitments. Therefore, you may forgive them, but you will no longer become vulnerable and share your mistakes or problems with them or rely on them because they cannot be trusted with that information. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you will trust all people on the same level. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you can expect people to live up to certain standards, and forgiveness doesn't mean that you have to relinquish the consequences for the wrong behavior. On one hand, you can give someone the benefit of the doubt, give them the opportunity to start over. And on the other hand, you might have to set some boundaries and change a little bit in that relationship, because forgiveness doesn't mean that there won't be consequences for the other person. Forgiveness does not mean that boundaries will remain the same. Forgiveness will make you wiser, and it will challenge you at times to be vulnerable and trust again. And that's important because forgiveness will set you free. And if we're not willing to open up and be vulnerable and trust again, we're going to put ourselves in an emotional prison. And that is not a good place to be. So the other side of forgiveness is apologizing. So how do you apologize if you've been rude, abrasive, lied, shown negative anger towards someone? What can you do? Well, don't blame it on anybody else. You need to take responsibility. There's a big deal with taking responsibility, and I see so many men wanting to blame other people for where they are at in life. And to me, that is unacceptable. You need to take responsibility. Admit you were wrong and follow these steps by saying, "I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me." And this takes humility, which a lot of people have a tough time being humble. It takes humility and self-awareness to confess your faults. And in the long run, you will grow as a person. You'll become a better friend, spouse, co-worker, parent, and as you continue to work towards reconciliation. I can tell you it is easy to play the victim. However, you grow stronger by taking accountability, and this offers life change. The foundational insights for today: forgiveness sets you free from the prison of anger and resentment. Forgiveness ends the cycle of anger and blame, moving you closer to reconciliation and new goals. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Don't forget to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you here next week. Remember, stay calm, stay strong, and of course, stay blessed.